Boa noite. Não falo português, desculpa. Yeah, so I'm Maria and I teach at Central St Martin's, which is an art school in London. And I've not been teaching that long. I'm sure I've been teaching a lot less than a lot of you. But I started teaching because of the way that we work as part of my collective called Assemble. So maybe I will kind of talk about how I work first, to kind of give it some context, and then talk about how the teaching relates to that. And if you have any questions or want me to talk about something more or less, just let me know. So Assemble is the name of the practice. So I'm one of 12 people. This is a structure that we've built ourselves. And actually, there's another person from the practice here, Jane. And so we are all friends, and we started working after studying architecture in Cambridge University. And the way we work is kind of a bit like a family. So we like to kind of just do things together. And we a bit like the Amish in America. The idea is that we build everything ourselves and that we learn about building through the process of building. So a lot of stuff we don't know, but we just try and then we learn. So just a little background. So in Cambridge, it's kind of a traditional architecture school. It's quite conservative, but then we were quite lucky because we did a few projects where we built stuff one-to-one scale. And made lots of models. So a lot of us did we started with Tom Emerson from 6A. I think he came here last year. But I guess we really enjoyed the making process. This is sort of low resolution. So we built kind of structure using cardboard and kind of learnt about construction through doing it. And I think that was really inspirational because of the bringing of the technical side of architecture and the interesting kind of design aspect together. Because I feel like a lot in English education, the technical side is very divided, and as students think it's very boring. I thought it was quite boring, but the design is something that everyone wants to do. But actually, we really enjoyed the bringing of that together, of the design and construction. And some of us also helped a collective in London called Exist to build Southwark Lido, which is a kind of temporary installation, and kind of learnt about how things go together by just building them. And so just to tell you about the projects we've done and how we've learnt through doing them, because we're not very experienced architects. We graduated and then we started to experiment whilst also working in traditional offices. So this is our first project, Primo Progetto. And this was very much about making things ourselves. So we were learning, we wanted to make, basically we found this article in the newspaper about empty petrol stations. And we wanted to do a project to do something in this space. And so this is a empty space, and this is the cinema. So we made the cinema, and the process of making it was very educational because we were learning how do you make a wall, how do you make a kind of exciting space with very little money. And not many permission. It wasn't very official. We had permission, but it wasn't like an architecture project. And so we had references, like you do in the university. You have references and kind of inspiration. But then we were also just trying out building, and we had a lot of help from some of our teachers, but also from kind of experts like theatre makers and artists and sculptors, and they all came and we all kind of tried to do things together. Different types of materials, using wood, also playing around with kind of using laser cutting, CNC, and it was very fun. It was kind of technical, but also obviously it was a design project. This is us. Making curtains and drawing. This is a bit like IKEA style, a diagram which shows how to put something together. So to teach other people how to do this with us. So it was like a collective building process. And this is the cinema inside. And this is, it was very popular. People came. And this is so the idea is that you watch a film, and then at the end, everyone pulled the curtains up, and you were part of the street again. Thank you. And it was in the summer. I mean, we're not as lucky with the weather as you, so that we had this 1 month of warm weather where we had this event. And this is the thing. And I think, personally, everyone loved it because, after graduating, and you go to an office and you draw toilets, and then this is an opportunity to kind of feel like a student again, but also be part of the real world, which is a nice experience. And then another project, which I guess we tried to involve more people, not just our friends, but the public, to teach the public how to build something. Because we think it's important that people feel like they're part of the city, or they contribute to the city. So this is the project in near the Olympic Park. Maybe this is interesting for you, I guess, because also the Olympics are coming here, and there are maybe spaces where there are temporary opportunities, or students can do stuff, but yes. And so we basically built a little building under a flyover. And we looked again at references of architecture in the area, so kind of Victorian brick buildings. And we decided to make something which is easy to put together, people who are not professionals. So this is an important part. So we went to a wood yard and to basically make bricks, but out of wood, so that we can drill through holes and put them together with rope. So it's kind of like a wooden toy, but a building. And so this makes it easier for the public to come and join as well. And so we had 11,000 bricks, and we were just, cutting and putting rope through them. So this is us. So this is the building. And it's a temporary project where we had film screenings and workshops, and it was kind of a nice family atmosphere. And some of us are much better makers than others. For example, Adam is very good at making furniture, and so everyone else learns just by seeing or helping him. So we're also learning all the time. And we also had the public come to learn how to make as well. And we had events. It was very fun. This Olympic Park. And this is from the flyover. And we also learn new techniques when new projects come. So how to use metal and wood in different ways. So we made these chairs by welding them together. And again, so we learned how to weld because a project came, and we kind of learned for the job. And so I guess we're very lucky to have a big workshop. So I'll talk about this later, but I think it's very important for learning is to have the facilities. And obviously it's not always possible, but the way we have access, a lot of us are sharing it, so it's kind of collective ownership of the tools and everything. Otherwise, as individuals, it's impossible, I guess, to have such facilities. And so one project which we did is Black Horse Workshop, which is about making a space for people to learn how to make things. So it's a library, but for tools. And the idea is that this could be something which is useful for students, but also something which is useful for professional designers, furniture makers, and the public, so the public can come and learn. The same way as you have the library, this is a library for tools. And the project is in a quite industrial area of London. And these are some of the kind of ambitions of the project, is to provide cheap tools and space to kind of help people learn how to make things. So have a technician and mix professionals with non-professionals. And create a space which is also social, so you can meet people and learn from them there. And we kind of did a research book about this. And then so this is open now, and this is these are the facilities that we have at the moment: wood, metal, space for kind of benches, cafe as well. This is the space, and so you can see the tools are everywhere. Like the books in library, you can see them. The idea is that you can see the tools, so that you would want, you're inspired to learn. And we made also a kind of educational guide, so how to make an object. So someone can come in, and it's like an IKEA guide, but then you make you make more yourself. And so you come in and you learn. And the workshop runs a lot of lessons for the public, where in the evenings or sometimes during the weekend, they kind of they teach people how to make something, like a project. And kids as well. And lots of different things are made there now. Yeah, this is strange. So people make different things, like a bike, or jewelry, a bed, a bag, I guess. And there is a market. So I think it's very important to have a kind of once a month showcase of people's work. In the same way you have at university an exhibition, this is a way of communicating with the city. And then now we'll talk about where we are based. So our office is here. It's an old industrial building near the Olympic Park. And it's undergoing a lot of change at the moment. So this is kind of the sort of change that's happening. So you have this road, buildings, petrol stations and industrial sheds, and they're gradually being deconstructed, demolished. And residential buildings are going up. So it's one of those, industrial areas which is undergoing a lot of change. And it's good and bad. Obviously, it's good because it's providing housing. Although this housing is not always for people. It's a lot of the time it's speculation, for land, because the land values in London are really going up. I guess it's the same as in Sao Paulo. And this is and it's also bad because spaces for kind of studios or artist spaces are being moved and priced out. So people can't afford to really make things in the city as much. And we kind of did a study of the area and all the different businesses and things that are there. And it's a really, it's a shame because a lot of it have to move somewhere else. So this is what it looks like at the moment. Industrial, new residential. So this is Sugar House Studios, and this old industrial building, which we turned into, we've done a lot of things to it. We've, so we initially we had our office in the back, and a workshop, wood and metal. And then we had a cafe and cinema. The cinema's from our first project. We moved all the stuff here. So it's kind of this public space. But then we spent too much time on the cafe. We started making pizza and running this cafe, and it was a bit crazy. So we stopped that. So now we have the workshop here and our studio here. And so this is a kind of part of our studio space with all the tools here. And we've had support from the local government, who is looking after the Olympic Park, because they feel that our work is, it's important to keep people making things and learning in this way, not just having kind of computer desks, offices, which are, can be done anywhere. So they've supported us, but yeah, we have this space for 2 years. And So this is the situation at the moment, our office, then kind of workspace and workshops. And we've started to rent out some space to other makers and furniture designers and artists. And we made a new project to build a new workspace. So because a lot of old industrial building is being demolished, so to build a new type of workspace which is cheap and can allow people to have cheap access to make things, because that's very important. And so this is this project, it's called Yard House. And we made all these tiles ourselves. So again, we learned how to make tiles because we had a very small budget. And the rest of the structure is actually very cheap and ugly. It's like this kingspan, which you get in, like shopping center, like kind of industrial shed, prefab material, which is very ugly. And so we kind of covered it with tiles, which we made. And the idea is to make a very cheap building, because then that means the rent can be low. And I don't know how this compares to construction here, but for England this is quite cheap. So we made them. I'll show you quickly. So this is cement, but with dye, so with coloring, and then with fiber. Fibrocimento. Fiberglass, yes. Fibra de vida. So it's roughly £500 per meter squared. So the idea is that the structure is quite free, loose. So this is the timber, the beams. And the idea is that the artists come in and build the walls themselves, because then that makes it cheaper. But it also means that people feel more like it's their space, and it's it's more of a community. And you can see that the height is it's like 3.5 meters, which is, and the minimum up to 4 meters, and the minimum is 2.5 or something. So it's generous. And the idea is that the construction is also, you could take it apart. So everything is bolted, and so that when we move, we can build it somewhere else. So the price of ground goes up because the site we are on at the moment is actually a development site for housing. So in 2-3 years' time, we'll have to move. So this is the space without the walls, and the staircase was made actually in our workshop by carpenters who are renting the space from us. So the idea is that, there's different people involved in the process. And this is James from Assemble making the balustrade. Again, so this guy learned how to weld because of all the projects, and then he made this stair. And then we learned how to make tiles. And we had this book from the 60s, kind of make your own tile. And so we kind of, used that and practiced. And this is Molly, who made most of them, because she's a sculptor and she kind of more confident. And so this is the cheap construction behind, you can see. It's called Kingspan, and it comes in panels. It's usually used for roofs, but also like to make these industrial sheds. And the wood battening is where the tiles were hanging. And we put this up ourselves. Oops. Yeah. And this is just some background about that in London this is very much needed. There was not enough cheap space for people to work and to make things. So this is just to show that people applied altogether for 150 spaces, but we only had 16 available. So it's obviously very much in demand. And this is just about the areas that people come from, and this is how much space people wanted. So 12 meters squared was 1 unit. But then people had the option to have 2 units because there's no walls dividing them, so they can choose themselves. So this is kind of the... and then this is all the different types of kind of arts that people were doing. So, you know, jewelry, architecture, designers, filmmakers. So it's like an art school, you know. It's like, and in a way, that's what it's become. It's a place where people do their thing, but also learn from each other. And this is how it's inhabited now. So you have textiles. She does illustration. And we have this thing called show and tell, where we all meet once a month. We did it once, but we meet and we show what everyone is doing. So we kind of learn about the different types of projects. So this person's making a greenhouse. So he's a carpenter and he's built everything himself. And so we're all listening to him. And then this is another guy who's making some other stuff. And I guess what we like is that it's messy. You know, it's not like it's opportunity for people to really let loose. Oh, sorry, looking at materials. And we also have parties, which is also very important. And so just to talk about how this relates to the teaching in Central St. Martin's. So Central St. Martin's has now got this new building. It's very, it's huge. All the departments are in one building, and it's an art school. So there's, everything. There's printmaking, sculpture, photography, video, and architecture, and of course, fashion is the most famous subject in the school. And this building is it's quite corporate. It's a bit, it's very clean. It's very good, but I guess there's not so much of that mess or the art school studio environment, which we like. Do you have any questions so far? Is this okay?
It reminded me of a discussion of that book, How Buildings Learn. It says in the Cavendish laboratory, the scientists would, change the building to their needs and not very pompous, and people would be happier in the old Cavendish than on the new Cavendish. And many Nobel Prizes came, but now they have a corporate building and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just like that. And it's also, the building is owned by a developer, Argent, who's a very big developer in London, and they build houses, and they are also developing a lot of the area in King's Cross. So actually, this connection is very obvious. And so they pay them rent, yeah. But I guess there's a relationship. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure they help each other, and maybe it's very cheap. I'm not sure how this works, but they manage the space. And it's interesting because I every year I sit on the interviews, because obviously and there's every day the kind of head of my department says. Or head of my year says, today we have to accept 10 people because the university is pressuring the teachers to have a certain amount of people because of this financial cycle. And so if they're not that good, but they tick the box, then you have to take them. So undergraduate, first, second, and third years is about between 60 and 70 people for the whole year, but I personally have 20, 15 to 20. So for masters, it's a lot less. Masters is new, and it's also doesn't have the same pressure. And masters this year, I have 14. So I teach 1 day a week for undergrad, but then I also do a short course which is 2 months with the masters, and I will show you this. And we have a lot of international students as well, a lot. And I think there's also even a quota, a number that we need to have as X amount of international students. Well, or it's recommended, yeah. So it's all very financially driven. Yeah. How much do they pay? Me or? All right. It's £3,000 per term. So it's £9,000 a year. And actually, Central St. Martin's is one of the few places which international students pay the same, or they pay much less than a lot of other London schools. And so, yeah, so there are obviously things that happen in the school and which attract the public, but it's mainly fashion, because fashion is the most famous course in the school. And so they do a lot of installations and they do the fashion shows, but it's very, it's also just very industry focused. But architecture doesn't have this at the moment. It's very, so these are the sorts of workshops that the school has are amazing. They have textiles, ceramics, wood, metal, 3D printing. It's really amazing. But somehow, the work that comes out is like this. It's a good drawing. It's a good section. But it's very typical. It's kind of dramatic shading. You have this birds in the sky. Stuff's happening in section, but not many things actually built, or not many things using the workshops. And so you can't see it. As a member of public, when you come to the show, you don't understand, maybe this looks nice, but it's not doesn't very connect to outside anyone except you and the teachers. Yes, and another kind of typical collage, which, as a student I've done a lot, and it's nice, but again, there's a lot of suggestion of materials, but then it's not kind of pushing it further. And this is just a kind of very quick diagram showing when people use the workshops, all this amazing facilities like the wood and the ceramics. Actually, term begins, everyone's, everything's new. Each term has about 3 months. So these are weeks. These are weeks. Yes, this is 1 year, sorry. 3 terms is 1 year. And this is roughly the different weeks. And at the end of term 1, first years have this project where the technicians from the model for the workshops, they kind of make them build something. So they have to, yes. So about 2 weeks or so, they make this project. It's either a structure or maybe it's some models, but it's a way of them, getting a workshop induction and learning how to use the machinery. So they do this, and it's very exciting, but then nothing, Then they have their project, and they draw, and they do all this stuff, and then at the end, just before they hand in, they make some quick models. But not many people experiment with materials after this first thing, they've... so it's kind of, they have to do it, and then it's gone. So this is just an ideal. This is what I personally would love to see, is that the pink is them going independent to the workshop. And so I guess the way to try and change it is to have another thing you have to do, but which is part of the design. So I guess what we're doing now, so what I'll be doing this year is after they've done their compulsory project, a workshop, we get them to start designing, but also have a compulsory thing which they have to make as part of the design, which is an obvious thing to say, but somehow it doesn't happen. And so then hopefully they will go back, maybe a bit more than normally. And so the thing we do with the MA students is that we like to get them to build stuff, and also to prepare for the end of year show, exhibition to the public, and to say, connect to the city, connect to the world, communicate through making something. And I guess this is an inspiration image. This is the Bauhaus workshops. Which is the situation in the Centre St. Martin's. We have all this textiles and ceramics and wood and stuff, but there's no sense of it coming together. It's all separate. In reality, because the building is managed by these developers, and because of all this system, and because there's also very busy, there's so many people, you have to book each workshop and be quite organized. Yes, and the only way, I guess, to try and help that situation is by making things more official to start with. So it's more part of the program, because then the teachers can help book the workshops and have a kind of high-level discussion about access. Because I guess without that it's even more difficult. But so having these projects. And so just to say that the project we did, the first project we've done, is to say, okay, so... technical stuff is boring. Everyone likes to design, but we're going to try and change that and say we're going to make you do something very specific. So you don't kind of spend weeks and weeks researching an idea about aliens and concrete, but you kind of give them something very specific to do, so you learn how to make something. And even I know it sounds very traditional, but actually now in schools, people I think maybe have too much freedom sometimes, and it's sometimes nice to say, do this. I don't know, maybe that's because I'm originally from Russia and a totalitarian approach, but no. Yeah, we feel there's a lot of creativity in doing something very specific. And so we did this project by saying you will make a big structure using truss systems. And we give students different types of truss and just say experiment, but it has to be a truss. And then, the overall idea is that they will build something which is a structure with truss, but then they will experiment with cladding and fabrics and have to, use other types of medium and different types of workshops. I mean, this is the dream, but... and also look, they have to think about how things will be put together, and because it's going to be a big project, they have to involve the rest of the school. So actually the MAs also involved all of the undergraduates to build it in the end. So they had to come up with a way of communicating how you would build it together. And also think about all the different types of tools you might use, and explain to everyone. And, just sometimes the obvious things are not so obvious. How do you put things together? Sometimes people have never nailed a nail. And this is a chicken. Frango? Frango. Okay. And just thinking, about how different processes can change the way things look, and experiment with finishes. Just looking at, powder coating, charring timber, staining, just getting them to think about that actually making a simple truss doesn't have to be so simple. It can be a very open-ended process. And then how the structure can also become small-scale furniture or something else. So actually this language is used in different ways. And then also think about, when everyone's putting things together, that everyone's responsible for different things. And so there's kind of collaboration even within the groups. So instead of having everyone doing one thing, different things. And so this is them putting it together. Quite chaotic. So they experimented with different techniques, and then we started to build in this main space in the school. So having more presence and having more of a kind of work in progress as opposed to a office environment. And in the end we had, the whole school was doing this, but we had groups of about 20, and each group would have a teacher kind of helping them, and then different people doing different parts of the same thing. So it was very impressive because to begin with, a lot of people didn't know what they were doing, and then it kind of grew. And the workshop technicians were actually happy. A lot of the times they're grumpy, but when you have a project, they're really excited. Because for them, they're helping and they're doing, and even if the structure is, it was then used for the exhibition as well at the end, which is important to open up the school. And so this year is the brief. So we haven't done this yet, but this is what they will do. Hopefully, is actually looking at bamboo. So and something different, because there's so many projects that use wood, and why not? Why just try a different material? So the university has a budget for this, but the way they get the money is by saying it's for the final show. So they have a budget for the final exhibition, and then actually we use that budget because this structure is used for the final exhibition. And they get a sponsorship sometimes from material suppliers. It's included, but it's a very small budget. And the idea is, that they will experiment with different types of joining techniques. And from this, they will make a structure. So again, it's kind of specific, but it's also quite open-ended. Who knows what it will look like. And that's fine. And also, if it doesn't work, it's also fine. This is this is maybe not the most exciting slide, but this is just a program. Maybe it's not very good. But the idea is that basically they start by experimenting first. So they make tests, one-to-one, and make a small object like a chair. And then later on, when they're more confident, they start to think about the bigger structure. And then the MAs put together a presentation to the whole school, and then for them to all build the bigger thing together. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 weeks. And then they present, and then they have 1 whole week to build. Yes. And last time it was 1 week. But it's possible because there's so many people. So if it's well organized, it's possible. It's actually surprising how much you can do when you've kind of got everyone doing stuff. So there's teams of 20, about 20. But you know how it is. Some people don't turn up. So there's always about kind of 10. Yeah. And it's not perfect. There's always people who don't have something to do, or people who are much more active than the others. And it's just people, isn't it? Yeah. Exactly. Some people just don't care. Or some people have said, oh, I don't want to do this. I want to design my own project. Yeah, I don't want to be doing this thing. But I guess there are also people who are, very talented, and they manage to find a way of being individual, but also being part of the collective. And I think that's important. Give people opportunity to do their own thing, but also contribute. So, it's difficult. And I guess the way we've tried to do it is if we have an overall structure, you have to make this thing, but then you can experiment with how you collate it or the types of things that go in it, and someone can just go and think about that and do the thing. And we're quite specific about the kind of the tools, the kit we give them for experimenting. And so we have some budget, which is not much. We also try to get things for free. So like the bamboo from this workshop in London, you have some offcuts, some leftovers, and they can experiment with that. So kind of trying to find ways. And we give, we say exactly the tools you need. And this is just one small project, which is, this is for the first years. And the idea is to get first years also making more, because it's the first year of your architectural education, to get you into that spirit. And just a small project to make them build a thing for a street festival, so in London, which is a real street festival in Caledonian Road. And the idea is to try and make it fun, because you don't want to, so they have more incentive to be involved, is to say, oh, we'll have a party. And so people, so they can make different types of things. It can be furniture, it can be clothes, it can be a sign, just something fun for this party, but it still makes them make something. And this is just a quick, myself and Jane just came back from Belo Horizonte, and we did a workshop as part of the Noite Branca Natura da Cidade, Natureza da Cidade, Natureza da Cidade Festival. So we did a 1-week workshop where we got people to make stuff. And so this is just to show, you probably all know this building, the Palácio das Artes, and it's very, we were told it's very formal and very grand building, and it was very strange that we were doing this thing there. And I guess, the security before you go in, it's very formal. And I think, our desire was to make it a mess. So we got all this material for free from the the gallery has its own kind of storage where they have stuff from exhibitions and they keep it. And so we had all this stuff for free, and we got tools from the gallery and just got people making stuff to put to like interventions in the city. So little furniture. Some people made swings. Some people made seats. And this is the space during. So we were one of the collectives who was invited. There was also someone from Rio, from Argentina, Madrid, Montreux, I think. Yeah. So yeah, this is what the space looked like during construction. So I'd like to end on this to show we feel this is a very good way of learning, is just to have lots of stuff and make a mess. Of course, it's not just that, not only that, but yes, liberdade. Yes. Thank you.